We are the Keyboard Samurai, a podcast focused on sharing insights to help those working in cybersecurity companies, be them technology or services. Each session, your host, Will Klusovsky, aka Will Clue, sits down with professionals in our industry to illuminate topics that will help your security biz, team, or self be better. Let's hack into it now. Hey everybody, Will here, and today we have Mr. Geoff Hancock, who has the title of CEO and every other C acronym that exists for certified behind his name. Geoff, great to have you. Why don't you give us the 20-second, 30-second spiel about who you are and why we're here to chat with you.
Sure. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. So, yeah, been in cybersecurity a while, and 30 years, actually, a little over 30 years. Originally started doing some work in the military, offensive, defensive, all kinds of stuff in special operations. Did that for a long time, got out of that, retired out of that, went into work for the intelligence community, did that for a while, got out of that, and became a CISO 2004. So I've been a CISO for 20 years this year, actually, a variety of different organizations. And even in my current role, I've been, so broadly speaking, I've been a CISO 6 times. I've been a CEO twice, once for my own company, consulting company, which I was also the CISO for. And then my current company, Access Point Consulting, was brought on as the CISO deputy CEO and then transitioned into the CEO role a few months ago, running the organization. So
that's great. So that's going to be great for our audience, I think. So that kind of leads to my first question. Having been on, and I've sat on both sides of the table as well, being in the consulting world and then being the CISO, there's a lot of dynamics there. So let me ask you straight up, like, which side's harder?
Ooh, good question. Golly. I think I have more fun with working with CISOs and CEOs and CIOs actually to help them accomplish that interconnection of cybersecurity and business and creating something successful for the organizations. I think that creative piece really kind of does it for me. As a CISO, when I first became a CISO, it was very, very challenging. One of the reasons why I have a couple of certifications behind my name is because I needed to get them to figure out what I was doing years back, and they've just kind of followed me around over the years. But I think that the point is, like, being a CISO has its ups and downs and challenges, and there's only so much you can do. Being a CISO outside, as an enterprise CISO, running organizations internally, making sure cyber operations is good and solid, introduced me or gave me the opportunity to work with other CISOs, which then blended in the experience really of being let's say consultant, but working with other CISOs as providing a service to organizations to help them run their cyber operations. And I think that became inherently more fun and challenging because you're dealing with an environment that you're not in control of, but I can help the CISO, CIO, CEO structure that environment and be successful. And that's been, I think it's more rewarding for me personally than being a CISO all the time for another corporation. So.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. When I got into this business, I wanted to be a CISO. That was my whole, that was my end game. And then after a couple of years in consulting, I remember my SVP sitting down, asking me what I wanted to do, and I said I used to want to be a CISO.
Yeah, I remember we talked before, and you emphasized that point. Your experience with all the consulting that you bring gives you, I think, a broader reach, right? You've got more arrows in your quiver, so to speak, that you're able to help a variety of CISOs in a variety of situations, which is a great place to be, I think.
Right. And it's like you, it's more creative, right? It's more it's different kind of problem solving. I'm doing the CISO thing now, and it's I'm not going to dumb it down, but like, we've all built programs, right? We know how to do it. It's nothing new. It has to happen. Yep. You got to go around the business and sell it. You got to figure out what's priority and where your risks sit and all that. But working with different CISOs, hey, are you a technically minded CISO or a business minded CISO or somebody who does has these gaps, whatever, and you can bring those to the table. That to me, I think, is a lot more exciting as well too.
Yep. I agree.
So let's talk a little bit about, you're in the CEO role, right? You're running a firm. So as a cybersecurity professional, what's something? Well, let's think. What's something others may not realize, or well, no, not realize. Let's say, what's something others, outside or maybe just getting started, individual contributors. What's something they don't know about kind of running that business?
So from gosh, from a business side, so I think there's two parts to that question. Let me back up for a second. So a few years, 10 years ago now, 11 years ago now, myself and a couple of friends started put together a program for a university in DC called the Cyber MBA program. And the whole purpose of the program was to combine not necessarily technical issues with business. That ends up happening in some of the courses we do, but it's a full-blown 2-year program. But really being able to try to intersect those things for a variety of different folks across an organization who are interested in cybersecurity and business, understanding both sides of that coin. So since then, a little before that, actually, my goal has been to answer your question. Has been to what are the differences and strengths and weaknesses, and why should you get into an agency, create a consulting company? Why should you not? What's the technical value? I think one of the biggest drivers is there is just not enough, quite frankly, solid folks who've been there, done that, and got the T-shirt, been around the block, however you want to phrase it, that can actually, to your point earlier, who've actually done the work, and to your point of your career, actually have done the work, but then can flip that and say, how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, to get started, you have to have an ability to understand the business, broadly speaking, because you're going to be working with a variety of different businesses, whether it's the government agencies or medical or manufacturing, right? There's always going to be a variety of organizations, but understanding the basics of business operations and the risks associated with that is foundational. Absolutely. Because you're never going to be able to talk to your customers' pains and gains. And the other side of that is, how does cybersecurity, both compliance and operations, merge together to secure the organization? You talked about everybody builds a plan. Cybersecurity, you've got to have a strategic plan, right? A roadmap, etc. Without having a solid foundation of what that looks like, you're going to be all over the place. So if I'm a customer and I've got somebody coming to me saying, hey, I can help you build this roadmap because, you said you need to understand your cyber operations and your maturity model, where you're at, so you can, be compliant with regulations, but then operationalize your cybersecurity so you're constantly secure. If that person does not know enough about foundational cyber operations, compliance, and the business, those three things, then me as a business owner is going to be all over the place. I'm going to be asking so many different questions, and it's going to be just, an uneven 3-legged stool, if you will. Right. So as a business owner, I'm going to be all over the place trying to figure out what to work on. And this is something that our customers, people who come to us, organizations that come to us, that's one of their biggest problems is, I need this part of cybersecurity. I need to be compliant, or I need some kind of program, and I need somebody who's been a CISO to sit down with my team once a month, twice a month, and help coach what we're doing, because they're so out of cadence, if you will. They're so myopically focused on the business, which they should be as a business owner, right? But they're not getting the right information from true cybersecurity consultants. And I think in our industry, CISOs are, unfortunately, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, a dime a dozen and born every minute, right? Whether they have the background for it or not, all of a sudden I'm going to be a CISO and off I go, or I'm going to be a CISO and I'm going to apply for this great CISO job. And they don't have any experience in that. And then as the buyer of that service, you get hosed. I can't tell you how many times we've had people come to us and say, our current provider sucks and we don't know what to do, right? And we want to get rid of them, but we're not sure if it's going to be a good decision or not. Can you help advise us on what we should do before we even engage with them, like in a contractual way? They're just asking for some advice. So to your question, I think those are two things: understanding the core business operations and then being able to apply that to different industries, but then understanding, so importantly, cyber operations, compliance is critically important, and then that merge piece of how security can secure business and all aspects of business. So long-winded question, but I kind of wanted to paint that.
No, this is about you sharing your information. That's great. I love you said too, because when you're on the consulting side of the house, you kind of get spoiled a little bit, right? Because everybody you talk to, especially if you're delivering services, is a paying client, and they want you there, right?
Yep.
And you're there to do whatever job you've been hired to do. But more
Yep.
broadly, like running that business, well, you've got to convince that person that they need you. So the not
Very
even
much so.
convince, but like you said, you've got to educate, especially when you're dealing with business owners or business people, and not necessarily other security organizations internally, right? You've got to
Yep.
help them understand, because they're generally focused on this thing I have to do. I know in my experience, with the enterprise space, it's a little different. In the enterprise space, you do the small engagements, you build the trust, and then you get an opportunity for the big managed services deal, right?
Yep.
But in the mid-market and the small business, they're like, oh, GDPR came out, I need to do this. Hey, Geoff, can you make this go away?
Right. Exactly. Sure, I can do that, but that's not going to be the answer you need, right, to secure your organization.
Right. Well,
Yep.
so that, like, I know that's interesting too, because I wholeheartedly agree with you. But you know, like, what's your guidance to those kind of working in our industry too, on that aspect? Like, if you've got those clients who are just a one and done, or are only ever worried about checking the box, like, how do you deal with those? Or do
Yeah.
you?
It's very much actually in part of what you said. It's getting your foot in the door and building that trust and saying, hey, look, I've done this for a very long time. Like on our team, we've got some very experienced CISOs and engineers. Mr. Customer, you're not going to be able to go do that yourself. It's going to cost you way more money to go figure this out yourself than it would cost for you to pay me or my team to go do it for you, right? And that's kind of a mental switch, because owners and operators, small business, small medium business, think the opposite. Well, I can go do this. I can just go pay somebody and get this done, and I'll pay you the rate of, like my mechanic charges $137.50 an hour, right? And they come to me and say, we need somebody for $60 an hour to come do cybersecurity assessment. And you're looking at me like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, I understand where you're at, but we gotta come to an agreement here, because what we're doing is actually securing your business and what that means. So the prices are going to be higher than $60 an hour or $80 an hour, and we end up working with them, right? Trying to educate them and encourage them. And I think one of the to get real specific on your question, we really like to educate and entertain, because we want to that's what sticks with people, right? If they're open to it, that's the bigger sticking point. If you're actually open to it. So one of the door openers or one of the conversation topics is, what are your pains and gains? What pains do you have today that you want to get rid of? And what gains do you want to build upon now? So in 12 months, you're in a better position. And that makes people kind of tilt their head and go, well, I haven't thought about it that way. I just want GDPR compliance. Okay, I get it. But then how do you make sure you're GDPR compliant on April 1st next year versus January 1st this next year, right? So, and it kind of helps them understand, oh, wait a minute, it's not a tick the box. It's not a, one time I'm done and I'm cleared, I'm secure, because your team, Mr. Customer, is constantly logging on to things and checking things, and there's threats, and you have to keep your systems updated. And it's really educating people on, this is the cost of doing business nowadays.
Right.
So you got to kind of invest somewhere. So
I love that. I'm a big proponent of that educational. And I've always been, a consultative seller, not a seller, but like in partner engager. But
yeah.
like, it reminds me, it's something. It's common in Josh Braun, who does a lot of I think he's great on LinkedIn or everywhere he's at. He's a sales educator, but he always talks about that education aspect, and he always gives really great stories. I think I saw one today where he was saying, my plumber's a great salesperson. I hired him to come over and fix something. And, he's like, hey, you've got a leak in your bathtub that could potentially go down into the wood, create mold. And it's going to cost you about, $2,000 a day, depending on how big that is, to take care of it. And that's all he said. And so Josh's response is, well, what does it cost to fix it now? Oh, $700. Done.
Right. That's perfect example. Example. But I think the challenge with our industry is, the customer needs to understand the impact of their decisions.
Right.
Whereas I know the water damage and mold will cause the house. As a CEO, I've got 15 things on my mind, and cyber is like in the back, right? So how's that going to matter? So to your point, and this has been much more of my passion in the last 10 years, is really helping CEOs and CIOs in particular educate them on what's going on and why it's important and the value proposition and how to apply it. And then coming in next to the CISO and saying, okay, how can we work together to make you successful, make the company successful? Therefore, everybody gets what they need in a reasonable price, right? So, and this in our industry, there's organizations that charge, consulting companies that charge $300, $400, $500 an hour.
Easy.
Yeah, and I have always had a problem with that. Not only paying that, which I've had to do, but being in a position to compete against that. So I've always, as running a consulting company, right? That's just, this is gonna probably make people uncomfortable too. That's just unreasonable to me. $300, $400, $500 an hour, it's just not worth it, right? And I've been doing this 20 years. Would I want to charge somebody $400 an hour for my 20 years of experience? No, honestly, I don't. I think that's, I wouldn't say price gouging, but that's expensive, right? And that's pretty high. That's lawyer fees, and I get that, right? And some people would say we're more important than lawyers. I understand that.
A lot of lawyers are jumping ship and coming to our industry.
Right, exactly. Right. But I think it's a reasonable to be able to say, we're going to charge a reasonable price based on what the need is and based on our expertise. And to the point earlier, customers, you kind of have to flip that model. You can't go out and get this experience on your own. You can't go out and get the 100 years of combined experience I've got I'm thinking of 2 people right now on the team, 3 people on our team, almost 100 years of experience within 3 people. You couldn't pay for that, right? It's going to take you too long, Mr. Customer, to go figure that out. It's easier to work with us and help us solve your problem. So, yeah.
So that's interesting because the pricing thing, and I've worked at quite a few places. I have my own rates, and it's been a long time since I've been anywhere billable under $200 an hour, right? So if I'm thinking about that, and well, that's obviously through my the company too, right? If I'm thinking about that, again, you're the CEO of a security consulting firm. EBITDA is important, right? So how do you balance that? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question, right? So it's always a balancing act to be able to identify, our costs and what's reasonable for the customer. And really how we want to invest. And that there's a philosophy perspective here too, that plays into this answer. Many, top 5 charge quite a bit, and they're good with a one and done, and they're good with here's a piece of paper, or, all personal experience. Spent way too much money a very long time ago. Convinced my boss to spend the money, actually, because he had the power to write the check. To spend a lot of money to have a consulting company come in, one of the top 3, and give us an assessment. Well, they gave us a document and said, have a nice day. And throughout the project, I was like, well, I need to hire people because we're going to do it, or you're going to do it. And it was just a different philosophy, right? So they came to the table stating, sure, we'll go in and give you an assessment and a large document, and then you can engage with us or one of our partners to actually implement at this rate, et cetera, et cetera. I get that business model because they're in to make money. Totally understand that. But it's a very much transactional perspective. So our organization, we philosophically, we handle it very differently. We look at our customers as long-term partners. Whatever the stage that they're in their growth of building their company, they may need an assessment, and that's it. And 6 months later, they may say, hey, we need another assessment, right? Or, hey, can you come back and give us a roadmap, right? We may get we get customers who are, hey, we're doing this and we need you to do these 5. Could you do these 5 other things? Let's have a conversation. And they're ready to go, right? So I think philosophically, that's an important thing for you, but for me, like this, it's that balancing of operations and what we need to do as a team, as a company, and keeping our employees, challenged, quite frankly. That's critically important. And then being able to flip that over to something reasonable for our customers from a price perspective.
That's outstanding. I think that's great advice for anybody who's got to deal with that balancing act for sure. Let me close out here on a quick note. Where can everybody find you, Geoff? Where are you at on the tube of internets that we have series of tubes?
So, there we go. Seriously, on LinkedIn for sure, on X for sure, under J Hancock. So I'm definitely out there. Geoff Hancock on LinkedIn. Going to be launching a newsletter probably most likely in January, and then doing a bunch of video shorts on cybersecurity on YouTube.
Oh, great.
That'll be launched here in December. So, yeah, it's interesting. I've been doing this cyber MBA course for a long time, and I'm tired, quite frankly, of that, because it's great academia work. I've learned a ton. I've learned a PhD worth of education from all of the students that we've taught over 11 years. But it's tiring. So I think I'm rotating now and thinking, okay, how can I help people via LinkedIn or a website or, that kind of thing. So I'm working in that process right now to kind of transition some of that work over, just to help the industry, right? I mean, it's really, there's so much need out there for people like you and I, who've been in the business for a long time, who actually have actual experience and been through the grinder. You got those people on this side of the house, and you've got other people who are just starting. And then in the middle, there's not enough expertise, that real hands-on expertise. I found it, and that's been pretty consistent. I think it's going to take another 10 years for that to catch up. But folks like us are, we're kind of kicking back saying, all right, we got this. We know what needs to happen. In 10 years, we may not be doing this anymore.
Yeah, we're doing there's a lot more of this. I feel like it's time to impart my knowledge. Right. And like you said, that middle part of the diamond needs to fill out. And that's probably going to be another discussion for another time, and several guests. I know we're going to want to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Geoff. Well, thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for enjoying Keyboard Samurai Podcast. If you'd like to engage, find Will on LinkedIn at /WillClue or visit at willclue.me. That's WILKLU.me for more info. Disconnecting now. Synac you later.